and welcome to Miracles in Faith channel. I'm your host, Linda Kay, and my guest today is Lorraine. Hi, Mom.
Well, hello there.
There is this thing called a box social. So can you tell me about the box social?
Well, those are the funny parts of life. Those are the comedies that you can look back on and say, oh, what a silly time. Due to the nature of our home life, dating was not an option. Work was a real high option. You had to be home. You had to have good grades in school. Getting to school was one thing. Staying in school was very, very high on the list for my mom and for myself as well. I've got to get your education. But I came home from school one afternoon and I saw this beautiful box on the sideboard. Mom, what is that? How come it's so pretty? Well, you're going to a box social tonight. Well, what's a box social? You don't need to know.
She was full of those, wasn't she?
You don't need to know. So
that's the first thing you want to do is, what is it? And you've got to go find out.
It's kind of like an auction sale. And people get to see ahead who brought what. When the bidding started, he bid for my box. And he kept bidding. And he kept bidding. Oh, Lord. Now what? So the man that bought my box said, well, we're not going to sit here in the schoolhouse and eat it. Let's go to my car.
Away from everyone.
Oh, really? I don't think so.
But you went.
Not willingly. I kind of dragged my feet. So this was a new experience, and you want me to sit in your car with you? I've heard too many stories about people in cars. So,
but it sounds dangerous, doesn't it?
It did to me.
Were you afraid?
Yes and no. I was curious and afraid at the same time. I think most of my curiosity won over. And as he sat in the car, he asked me to sit in the passenger seat, and I said, no, I think I'm going to go back in the building.
How did you get away from him?
Walked away.
And what caused you to walk away? Did you run?
No, I didn't run, but I hurried. Funny, there were some games played, and there were other things that happened, as they do in any social. And then everyone sits in a circle, and they tell whose box they got, and hopefully every man got the girl's box that he wanted to date. Well,
so it sounds to me like you weren't going to get talked into anything.
No, I don't think so.
I think that served you pretty well. I think that whether or not you're an entrepreneur or you're entering a new country or a new life or a new culture or a new situation, that you have to really follow that inner voice within you, the one that says, be still and know that I am God.
That's so correct.
So one thing that I think I grew up knowing from you was that not to get talked into doing something that you'll regret, because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
That is so true.
So, were you carefree as a child, problem-free,
Oh no,
worry-free?
I wasn't problem-free.
Did you have an easy start in life?
I came into the world early.
How early?
Came into the world at 7.5 months, born with a horrible, horrible skin disease that my mom described as, she was sure I had leprosy, but it wasn't. It was called eczema. And she said I looked like a piece of raw liver when I was born.
Yikes.
And
that'd be hard to look at even from a mother.
From a mother, I think it was very, very difficult. And she found that it was difficult to treat. It was difficult to find a doctor that could find treatment.
Did you go to a lot of doctors as a child?
Oh my goodness sakes. By the time I was 8, I had been so many doctors and so many cures. They're mentioned in the book. So I won't tell you of all the miraculous cures.
Okay, there is one that I want to ask you about. And it involved Lady Pinkham's formula.
Wow.
So what was Lady Pinkham's? Who was Lady Pinkham?
Well, I think that she was a lady that was came in a bottle.
Okay.
And I didn't know what it was, but I know my mother tried it many times for whatever ailed her.
So only women took this for anything that was feminine or
Well,
ailing them?
I didn't see my dad take it.
So I'm going to guess that it was for women only.
Well, she told us, don't get into that and leave that alone. That was hers for when she had a headache, when her back hurt, when her stomach hurt. Later on throughout the years, after my mother passed, we were cleaning her house. I found out what was in this Lady Pinkham stuff. 40% alcohol.
Well, no wonder she didn't want you to have.
It was a miraculous cure.
I am certain that after at least one full bottle, I'd feel pretty good too.
Well,
Maybe the biggest surprise and miracle for you was living to be 90 years old when you were a preemie and frail and have had every single kind of malady that you could imagine. And possibly one of the best hideouts that you could have would be being a musician, because being a musician meant that you didn't have to suit up in gym and have your exposure of your skin or your breakouts. Were you pretty good at that?
I would have to say I was. Became a camouflage artist.
Camouflage was good for you. Was there ever a period of time that you felt more hopeful that you might be able to find a cure?
Oh, certainly. There were many times.
What is it? Does one specifically stand out for you?
I would have to say yes, the mineral baths in Montana. So I wrote to them and secretively, and then showed my mother the brochures and said, Mom, this is going to help me. It really, really will.
And what did she say?
Well, she thought about it considerably, and then she said, well, it's going to cost money, and we'll see what we can do when you graduate from high school. So later that year, or the following year, she sent away for the information for me to stay, and there I was. Hot Springs, Montana.
So how'd you get to Hot Springs? She gave you a car?
Oh, sure. We got on the Great Northern Train.
Okay.
And had the most beautiful ride all through the Rockies.
And it took you straight into Hot Springs?
Took me to Plains, Montana. 20 miles short of Hot Springs.
Did you have a lot of cash in your pocket?
Oh, sure. None. There were no credit cards. Women weren't allowed credit at that time, you know.
So let me get this straight. You get to Plains, Montana. You don't have a credit card. You don't have a cell phone. You must feel kind of abandoned and, frankly, in need of a miracle. What happens?
Well, the miracle for me was I saw a lady throwing a bunch of mail in a big, big van. And I asked her, I said, where are you going? She says, oh, I'm going to Hot Springs, Montana.
It doesn't get any better than that.
That's right.
So did she offer you a ride? Did you ask her?
She sure, well, I asked her, I said, is there room for one person like me? I'm headed for the bathhouses. Absolutely, get in.
Oh boy, so you get to the bathhouse, you get to the hotel. The hotel, immediately you go to the baths. What happens?
And it was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful relief.
So the waters are miraculous.
As long as you're taking a bath,
What happens when you get out?
skin dries out.
So were you in worse shape or in better shape?
I would have to say I was in much better shape.
So now you're in this tiny little place called Hot Springs, Montana, and you're going to church. So what kind of social things were you doing?
Well, we all would go to Courtney's Corner and have a milkshake. Oh, and we'd all go out and I guess some of the young people went barn dancing, but I did not know how to dance and never had been to one.
Was there any particular incident at that time that kind of stands out in your mind?
Yes, one evening, we went to church and Peggy asked me, she said, I will be busy downstairs preparing to go into choir. When I'm going with a fellow by the name of so-and-so, would you help him when he comes to the door. She gave me his name, and I said, well, what will he be wearing? A green Mackinaw, and he's tall, dark, and handsome. You'll know. Well, no sooner did she say that, and here he came. She said, take care of my date while I'm busy in the choir.
Wow. Okay. Yep. So you meet this guy. He's wearing a green Mackinaw, and he's pretty handsome. Tell me more. Tell me more.
Well, I said, are you Dutch Snider? Oh, yes, I am. Who are you? So I told him, and Lorraine Chikolowski. I said, no, Lorraine Harchenko. Chikolowski, I see. So I saw the guy had a sense of humor, and I couldn't help but laugh. And I said, you know, you're going to be sitting with me. He said, what? I said, you're going to be sitting with me during the church service until after Peggy's done with her choir. All right.
So he sits there.
Well, we sat in the church in the second pew so Peggy could watch us. And after church, we all went out to Cortner's Corner and had a milkshake.
Here you're being introduced to somebody that is talking about this barn dance, and nobody seems to want to go until he asks you.
Well, he asked Peggy. She didn't care to go, and I was intrigued by the word barn dance. I thought we were going to go to a barn. I said, sure, I'll go, but remember, I've never danced in my life, and I don't know how. Well, I'll teach you. So off we went.
Okay. What happens next?
Well, I stumble, and I fall.
How embarrassing.
Well, it sure was.
Was he mortified, or were you?
I was mortified.
Okay. And he didn't seem to be bothered by it?
Not at all. He told me to get up, and if you're bothered by it, quit looking at people and they won't look at you.
That must have been pretty novel.
Well, for me it was, and I thought, wow, what a guy. Not going to sit there and no pity parties, no nothing, just get up and go. I like this guy.
How did it make you feel?
Free. I didn't have to feel like it was an embarrassment to him or to myself. Just get up and do it over again if you have to.
Okay. So that was the end of seeing Dutch, right?
Oh, no. I began to see more of him. Each day we found something to do. After I got done with my treatments, we'd go out in the country, meet his friends. He took me to his folks. He took me to his sisters.
Wait a minute. That sounds like you're dating.
Well, if that's what you call it, that's what we were doing. Because it sure was fun.
God has a wonderful plan. My mother may not have had such a great plan, but this seemingly totally innocent, out of the blue, not looking for it guy is now literally courting you. And how long were you there?
Total 6 weeks.
So you're winding down to the end of the 6 weeks. You kind of like this guy, and you tell him one day that you are running out of funds and it's time to go home. What does he say?
Well, he looked at me and said, well, what do you plan to do? And I said, well, I plan to go home and go back to school. So he paused and he said, well, why don't we just get married? I said, okay, that's good sound. That's good. I didn't have to change for Dutch. Just keep doing what I was doing. Be myself.
The things that stand out for me are faith and trust. And there were a couple of examples of you having faith that something was going to work. You know, you were looking for a cure, but you didn't know what was going to happen. But the cure that you got was far more than you asked for.
God works in mysterious ways. He sends us blessings and miracles when we least expect them. The greatest miracle is I became your mother.
There you go. Well, that is pretty miraculous. I don't think I can top that. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. This is a great story about having faith and having trust and belief and knowing that things are going to work out. Again, that small inner voice that says, be still and know that I am God.
So the man that bought said, well, we're not going to sit here in the schoolhouse and eat it. Let's go to my car.
Away from everyone.
Oh, really? I don't think so.
But you went.
Not willingly. I kind of drug my feet. You have to remember, I have never been out with a man before. Not even one I liked, I would have liked to have gone out with. So this was a new experience, and you want me to sit in your car with you? I've heard too many stories about people in cars. So,
But it sounds dangerous, doesn't it?
It did to me.
Were you afraid?
Yes and no. I was curious and afraid at the same time. The person that bought my basket was not my choosing, something I would not have chosen.
So it sounds to me like you weren't going to get talked into anything.
No, I don't think so.
I think that served you pretty well. I think that whether or not you're an entrepreneur or you're entering a new country or a new life or a new culture or a new situation, that you have to really follow that inner voice within you, the one that says, be still and know that I am God. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I know that you talked about being unhealthy as a youngster and have had every single kind of malady that you could imagine, for breathing to skin to anything topical. You have these issues, and you got pretty good, I think, at disguising yourself or disguising your breakouts. And possibly one of the best hideouts that you could have would be being a musician. Was there ever a period of time that you felt more hopeful that you might be able to find a cure?
I would have to say yes, the mineral baths in Montana.
So you meet this guy, he's wearing a green Mackinac, he's pretty handsome. Looking for a cure, but you didn't know what was going to happen. But the cure that you got was far more than you asked for.
God works in mysterious ways. He sends us blessings and miracles when we least expect them. The greatest miracle is I became your mother.
Something naturally happens when you're not looking for it. Allowing yourself to be open enough and that small inner voice that says, be still and know that I am God. And if you're paying attention and you act on it, something fairly miraculous will follow.